Okay, so I wasn't 100% sure what you would want to hear from me, so I'm just going to sort of generically tell you a little bit about where I started, where I am now, and how Harvard helped me get there. So I'm going back a step further, or a couple steps further. So I came up through the California public school system and was the first person in my family to go to college. I was lucky to go to Princeton University, where I had the sort of most humbling experiences of my life. It was the first time where I was surrounded with people who, I had trouble finding somebody who I didn't think was 10, 20 times smarter than me. And so I was like, okay, this is a different game. This community is different than what I'm used to. And it took me a long time to find a path the path that led me to Harvard, but that path for me was a love of psychology. It was the field that I was most interested in, most passionate about, and also had the cuddliest, most interesting advisor in the entire department. And so I latched onto him, and he sort of introduced me to this field. And that was really great. So this is my sort of mentorship is, to me, one of the most important things now, partly because of that experience. And he helped me find positioned as a research assistant after college because I didn't think I was quite ready for graduate school. And it just so happened I would do this research assistant position with somebody who had been the very same advisor student at Princeton when he was an undergrad there. And this is Jeremy Wolf. He's a professor at Harvard Medical School, one of the top psychologists in the world, but also just a really fantastic mentor too. And so by working with Jeremy, I was convinced I really want to do this. I really want to go to graduate school in this area. And I think Jeremy's letters carry a lot of weight because I got into a bunch of graduate schools, and I don't think that would have happened straight out of undergrad. And one of those was Harvard. But the others were also really exciting possibilities, schools like MIT and Caltech and Princeton, which I was very fond of and thought I might want to return to. But I decided to come here. And again, it was a mentor-based decision for me. And I know this is very specific to my case, but it was really about the specific advisor that I wanted to work with here at Harvard in the psychology department. His name was Patrick Kavanaugh. And everybody I talked to in my field said, if you get the opportunity, you have to say yes. You have to go work with Patrick. It'd be ridiculous not to. So my decision to come was really based on that match and that desire to work with this one advisor. But there were obviously so many other benefits of choosing to come here. So I'll say a little bit about the conveyor belt, which is actually ridiculously fast and awesome for a young scientist who's trying to get into their field and become known. People pay a little bit more attention to you at conferences and poster sessions, for better or for worse. I was able to get some name recognition at a very young age, and the sort of young investigator awards that you end up getting here and there, it's about people just noticing you when you're young. It's not really that you're better or moving faster, it's that you're noticeable and salient. And I think that's about the Harvard brand, as much as I'd like to take full credit. So that's fantastic, and it was really amazing for senior professors from other universities to know my name when I was a fourth-year graduate student. And that sort of, I just don't think that happens everywhere. After graduate school here, I went to do a postdoc at MIT, and then 3 years later, I came back as a faculty member in the same department that I was a graduate student in. And in fact, I now have my old advisor's desk. So it's talk about surreal. That was never what I imagined my trajectory would be, but again, I think it's all thanks to, in the early days, having some recognition and appreciation before you've really earned it, and then being able to build off of that. Also, one of the great things about the lab that I joined here, I didn't really realize how important or exciting this would be, but that lab had, in the year I entered, it had students from Iceland, Iran, Korea, India, Canada, okay, that's maybe not a stretch for some of you, but Canada, and then of course all over the United States. And this was just in the office that I was in. This was the diversity I was exposed to in my lab. And if you think you know something about world politics, you should talk to a kid from Calcutta. Like you don't know anything until you've talked to somebody who's been And so there's just these really interesting and exciting conversations, both about science, but about the world. And that was something that I realize now as a faculty member, that that's enabled by Harvard. They help us fund international students. They help us do this, and that's not a given at other universities. So they're just sort of encouraging this diversity financially, but also just through this practice of inviting people from everywhere and them coming, which is great. Okay, so I wanted to say a couple more words, a little bit about opportunities and challenges as a graduate student. So I've mentioned the opportunities, which are great. This is sort of, and I think all of you, nobody needs to be convinced that there's going to be, exciting intellectual environment and that it's going to be incredibly fast-paced and exciting on every level intellectually. But I also found that that there were tremendous resources, and this was mentioned previously, that you just wouldn't expect. So you can contact faculty from all over the university, and they'll take the time out and meet with you. Some of them will say, "You want to do that project? Let's also do that project." And it just seems like doors are open, and you can ask people, and they'll be more than excited to work with you. One of the challenges, though, as a graduate student, I thought was dealing with the fact that everybody was just so high achieving and so high performing that you kind of have to step back and just realize that you have to move at your own pace. So my first year as a graduate student, one of the second year student who sat in the desk behind me had 2 papers in nature and 1 in science. And it was like, is this what I'm supposed to have by the end of my second year? You kind of have to dial it back and not worry about the comparisons. And that I thought was, but on the other hand, I've got this guy sitting next to me who's got 2 papers in nature and 1 in science, and I could talk to him about, how are you doing this? How did you get to that point? What kind of questions are you asking? How do you get there? So I used that to I took advantage of that as best I could. I talked to as many people as I could, and actually the hardest part is you'll never run out of people to talk to. There are so many people to talk to, so many events going on. And so the hardest part will really be choosing which ones you're going to take full advantage of. But anyway, that's part of my story, part of what I got out of Harvard, and looking forward to hearing your questions.